In 2020, it's hard to find an object that doesn't contain plastic. But how and why did this material become so prominent, and what are its lasting impacts?
What are plastics?
The invention of plastic in the early 1900s was revolutionary. The lightweight, durable material could be molded into almost any shape and was cheap to mass produce. During World War II, plastic production tripled. This allowed the U.S. to replace scarce resources like silk and glass with plastic alternatives.
Today's military weapon becomes tomorrow's peacetime instrument. Plastics will play as large a role in peace as they do in war.
After that, the market for plastic kept growing.
Really, about the 70s was when there was a big shift towards single-use plastics. And it's been within the last generation that it's become completely pervasive. The whole push on recycling was basically an industry attempt to blunt criticism that it was going to create an environmental problem down the road.
Researchers estimate that humans have created around 8.3 billion tons of plastic since the 1950s, a material that takes between 500 to 1,000 years to degrade. Between 1950 and 2015, the world produced 7,800 metric tons of plastic. Of that, about 8% has been recycled, 12% burned, and nearly 79% has accumulated in landfills and the environment. The Santa Cruz Materials Recovery Facility receives about 35 tons of recycling per day. And according to the Waste Reduction Program Manager, 15 to 20% is immediately discarded due to high contamination rates.
And one of my favorite parts of the tours is just to watch people's facial expressions as they stand there at the tipping floor or watch the staff sorting the material, and their jaw almost drops because sometimes they can see not their exact material, but they can see similar items that they've put in the recycling bin without giving it much thought. We lose sight of the fact we want the convenience of putting something into a curbside cart or a dumpster, and we want it magically to turn into something else.
Traditionally, the United States and the rest of the world has relied on China to accept and sort its plastic waste. However, in 2017, China toughened its contamination standards, disrupting the recycling market and leaving U.S. sorting facilities with the waste. In 2018, the Santa Cruz sorting facility stopped accepting UCSC's contaminated recycling, which derailed UCSC's goal to divert 90% of its waste from landfills by 2020.
Our contamination levels in recycling have been too high from the campus because the standards have increased greatly, and now that means, as of today, most of our recycling is getting landfilled instead of recycled, and that's scary for students.
According to Greenpeace, the United States exported 1.1 billion kilograms of plastic in 2018, with 78% landing in places with poor waste management systems.
Really, the most damaging thing has been spread of disposable plastics to the developing world. And initially, you're going into countries where waste stream has always been compostable or reusable. And you're dropping these materials that are never going to go away onto those cultures. And you end up with mounds and mounds and mounds and mounds of stuff that's never going to go away. And because plastic is so cheap, because it's the cheapest possible way to package this stuff, that's what you're going to get. There are no alternatives.
It's estimated that 8 million tons of plastic enter the ocean every year. By 2050, it's expected that plastic will outweigh the biomass of every animal in the ocean, and the plastic industry will consume 20% of oil production.
That impact is huge. You probably can't put a price on it. And one of the other things that happens is when you can't put a price on it, you just ignore it. So the real impact of plastic never really became part of the calculation.
It is cheaper for manufacturers to produce new plastic waste than recover it from our waste stream. This is leaving local municipalities to deal with the plastic waste with little to no financial support.
Too often what happens is you get something like California where the legislature issues unfunded mandates to fix the problem, and local governments are left with no money to actually try and come up with a solution. In cities like Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, San Francisco, not here, what has changed the waste stream fundamentally has been a focus on composting. And When you do that, then your waste stream drops about 90%. It's compostable, it's reusable, that's it. And basically limiting recycling to things where we know it will genuinely go to a cradle-to-cradle economy, or to, if it's going to be degraded, to something where we know exactly what's going to happen.
While moving to a compostable waste stream is attainable, it also requires substantial investment, an investment that UCSC is not yet willing to make.
And the university has explored potential options for composting on campus. Those haven't come to fruition. They're expensive, and I think that, the university has to decide whether it's going to commit to that infrastructure resources, and whether that aligns with the primary mission of the university of teaching and research and teaching students.
And the core problem is that as long as you're able to spread the blame, and as long as you do not value the damage that toxics cause and the damage that your materials cost at the back end of the life cycle, if you don't have to take responsibility for any of that, you're going to keep doing what you're doing.